For most of human history, the act of acquiring a resource required a tangible physical sacrifice. There was a weight to the transaction. Coins were counted out, livestock was bartered, or labor was exchanged directly. The moment of acquisition was distinct, marked by a pause in time where value changed hands. It was an event that demanded attention. It possessed a specific, undeniable gravity. Today, that gravity has largely evaporated. The modern financial transaction is defined not by its weight, but by its absence. It has become a background process, a silent hum beneath the noise of daily operation. We have entered an era where the exchange of value no longer requires a conscious pause. It occurs in the milliseconds between a desire and its fulfillment. This phenomenon is often described as convenience, a triumph of user interface design and network connectivity. However, to view it merely as a technological upgrade is to miss the fundamental shift in economic architecture. We are observing the systematic removal of friction, the psychological and physical barriers that once stood between an impulse and a purchase. This system is designed to be invisible. It operates best when it is noticed least. The silence of the modern transaction is not a glitch, it is the product. This architecture of silence is woven into the fabric of the daily routine. It begins often before the individual has even left their residence. A ride-sharing service is summoned with a single touch. The destination is selected, the car arrives, the passenger enters, travels, and exits. At no point is a wallet opened. At no point is a meter read or cash handed over. The payment is processed in the cloud, detached completely from the experience of the ride itself. The act of paying has been rendered obsolete, replaced by the assumption of payment. Consider the morning coffee run. In previous decades, this required a sequence of mechanical actions: waiting in line, retrieving currency, receiving change, waiting for a receipt. Today, a mobile order placed 5 minutes prior reduces this to a simple pickup. The transaction occurred in the abstract, moments before the physical product was even brewed. The queue is bypassed, the register is ignored. This pattern repeats across the digital landscape. Streaming services renew automatically, drawing funds on a monthly cycle without requiring reauthorization. Digital marketplaces store payment credentials, reducing the acquisition of goods to a single click. In the realm of gaming and software, real currency is converted into abstract tokens, gems, points, or credits, further distancing the user from the reality of the expenditure. It feels acceptable because it feels efficient. The modern economy values speed above almost all other metrics. By removing the mechanical steps of payment, time is ostensibly saved. The friction of the wallet, the chip reader, and the signature is categorized as inefficiency. Consequently, the removal of these steps is welcomed as progress. It allows life to flow without interruption. Yet it is precisely this lack of interruption that signifies a profound change in how resources are managed and perceived. The calculation of cost, once a prerequisite for purchase, is now a retrospective activity, if it happens at all. To understand how this system functions, one must look at the engineering of friction. In behavioral economics and interface design, friction is defined as any variable that slows down a user's journey from intent to completion. Entering a 16-digit credit card number is friction. Typing a billing address is friction. Even the split second required for facial recognition is a form of micro-friction. The objective of the frictionless system is to reduce the cognitive load required to spend money to near zero. This is achieved through a process called decoupling. In a traditional cash transaction, the consumption of a good and the payment for that good are coupled together. They happen simultaneously. This simultaneity creates a psychological check, a moment of evaluation. Frictionless systems decouple these events. Credit cards were the first iteration of this, pushing the payment weeks into the future. Mobile wallets and one-click ordering refine this further by removing the physical artifact of the card itself. The payment mechanism is embedded into the environment. When a user subscribes to a service, the payment is decoupled from consumption entirely. The charge occurs on the first of the month, regardless of whether the service is used daily, hourly, or not at all. Behind this design lies a powerful incentive structure for merchants and financial institutions. Data consistently shows that as payment friction decreases, transaction volume and average transaction value increase. When the pain of paying, a term coined by behavioral economists, is mitigated, the consumer is less price sensitive. They are less likely to audit the cost of add-ons, tips, or premium features. Furthermore, the system relies on the abstraction of value. Casinos have long understood that people gamble more freely with plastic chips than with bundles of cash. The chip is a symbol of value, but it does not feel like money. Modern digital ecosystems replicate this model by converting dollars into platform-specific credits, or by burying the total cost behind a smooth swipe to confirm animation. The interface masks the loss of resources. The persistence of this system is driven by the feedback loop of convenience. The merchant sees higher revenue. The platform provider gathers more data and transaction fees. The consumer experiences less resistance in their daily life. The incentives are perfectly aligned to maintain the velocity of money, ensuring that capital flows with the least amount of drag possible. The invisibility of frictionless spending is not merely a technological trick, it is a psychological one. It exploits specific behavioral patterns inherent in the human brain. The primary mechanism at play is the suppression of the somatic marker. When a person prepares to make a physically painful or risky decision, the body often reacts. A slight increase in heart rate, a subtle tension. Historically, handing over wealth triggered a mild version of this stress response, serving as a biological caution signal. Frictionless systems bypass this signal. By effectively hiding the transaction, the brain is not given the cue to register loss. The visual and tactile feedback that usually accompanies a reduction in resources is absent. A bank balance is just a number on a screen, and when a purchase is made, that number often doesn't update immediately, or it updates in a separate app that is not currently open. The feedback loop is broken. Additionally, humans suffer from a cognitive bias known as temporal discounting. We value immediate rewards significantly more than we fear future costs. The pleasure is now, the pain is abstract and distant. Frictionless spending leverages this by making the reward, the product, the service, the food, immediate, while the cost is relegated to a monthly statement or a background notification. Design choices reinforce this blindness. Notice the aesthetics of modern checkout screens. They are often calm, using soft colors and reassuring language like "you're all set" or "order received." They rarely emphasize the dollar amount in a jarring way. The design language is one of completion and success, not of subtraction. There is also the factor of aggregation. In a frictionless environment, small expenses, microtransactions, accumulate without individual scrutiny. A few dollars for a digital rental, a small fee for delivery, a recurring charge for data storage. Because each individual friction point is removed, the cumulative effect is difficult to visualize. The brain struggles to sum a series of invisible, seamless events into a coherent total. The spending becomes a steady, unseen current rather than a series of distinct waves. As this system scales, it fundamentally alters the structural flow of capital within an economy. The normalization of frictionless spending has facilitated the shift from an ownership economy to an access economy. When payment is painful, consumers prefer to buy once and own forever. When payment is invisible and recurring, the subscription model becomes the dominant economic force. This impacts the stability of household finances. In a cash-based or high-friction system, spending is naturally capped by liquidity. One cannot spend what one does not physically have in hand, or at least the barrier to doing so is high. In a frictionless system, the default state is often a continuous outflow of funds. The effort shifts from deciding to spend to deciding to stop spending. Canceling a subscription or removing a saved credit card requires more steps, more friction, than letting the charges continue. The inertia creates a baseline of consumption that exists independently of the consumer's active choices. Structurally, this benefits large-scale aggregators and platforms. Companies that control the interface, the app stores, the payment processors, the rideshare platforms, become the gatekeepers of this flow. They take a percentage of every frictionless transaction. Therefore, they have a vested interest in eroding friction further. We see the integration of payment systems into social media, into vehicles, and into smart home devices. The broader impact is a society where commerce is ambient. It is no longer a destination one visits, like a market or a store. It is the atmosphere. The ability to transact is woven into the infrastructure of communication and entertainment. This blurs the line between citizen and consumer. If every screen and every interaction is a potential point of sale, the commercial state becomes the permanent state. The distinction between shopping and living begins to dissolve. We stand at a specific juncture in the evolution of exchange. The trajectory is clear. The complete removal of the conscious act of payment. Biometric verifications, using a fingerprint, a face, or a palm print, are already replacing the need for devices. The body itself becomes the authentication token. In this potential future, the gap between desire and acquisition closes completely. The thought and the purchase become nearly simultaneous. The external tools of finance, cards, cash, apps, recede entirely into the infrastructure, leaving only the individual and their impulses. This is not necessarily a negative development, nor is it purely positive. It is simply a shift in the physics of value. It represents a world where the friction of the physical world is traded for the velocity of the digital one. The systems are designed to operate without pause, without question, and without silence. The ledger continues to update in the background, cataloging choices made in the blink of an eye. The invisible financial system does not sleep, and it does not require attention to function. It requires only consent, often given once, and then forgotten. The transaction is no longer an event, it is a state of being.